Hi everyone, it's Kind. Welcome back to my channel. So today I'm back with a brow tutorial, finally. My last brow tutorial was like ages ago and it was actually atrocious. So I wanted to do an updated tutorial on that. Plus I wanted to do an in-depth detailed video on how I achieve these like drag brows that I kind of do quite often in my personal life but not really enough on camera. Since I'm covering up my brows in my videos all the time, I wanted to make a video that you guys could just refer to with all the detailed tea on how I achieve this drag brow and also how I achieve this natural day drag brow. So if you want to see how I achieve either of these looks, definitely keep on watching. Alright, so we're going to be starting off with our natural day drag brow, and for this I'm going to be using the Anastasia Beverly Hills Dipbrow pomade in the color Chocolate, and I'm going to be applying that using a MAC 266 angled brush. So my brows are pretty nicely groomed already just because I do it so often, but what I will do a couple times a week is I'll take a spoolie and I'll brush kind of this way. As you can see here, we have some hairs that are kind of like standing up above that brow line. What I will do is I'll just cut them off. That way the brows are nice and thin. If you're into that full bushy messy brow aesthetic, you might want to keep those hairs long and bushy, but for me, I like that nice thin painted on look, so I'm not about to have some bushy ass brows. So all I'm going to do is put some product on the brush of mine, loading it up on both sides, and then I kind of wipe off all the excess on the side of that pot. As you can see, this is what the brush looks like, and when I turn it, it's very thin, meaning that it'll create a very precise line, and that's what you want in an angled brush. So since I like that faded brow look, I'm not going to put any product in this area, so I'm going to be starting out around here, kind of in short strokes, and then just go around the curve of that brow. I kind of like to elongate my brow just to make it appear thinner and more proportional to my face. So there's that bottom line. Dipping it in that pot again, and I'm going to go on the top line again. Just following the natural curve of my brow, except I kind of exaggerate that curve around here, just because my natural brow gets a little bit droopy there, and I need to keep it nice and dramatic. So that's kind of the basic shape of that brow. Dipping it back into that product once again, and I'm going to start filling it in. Like I said, I like the faded brow, so I'm going to keep the end the darkest and most concentrated. And at this point, I'm not going to dip my brush back in the product again. All I'm going to do is take advantage of whatever I already have on my brush and these two lines, and I'm just going to fade them into the brow and then start working the product towards the front of the brow. Blend that color. We don't want to be able to see this line anymore here. So we're blending that color upwards into the brow. And like I said, I like my brows to look pretty bold and painted on. So what I will do next is I'm going to take some foundation, the same foundation I just put on my face. You can use a concealer if you like. And I'm going to put that on a little flat synthetic brush from MAC that looks like this. And all I'm going to do is go against that brow, like so. Doing this step is a great way to make it instantly look like you just got your brows threaded because it really heightens that contrast and makes that line very sharp. Once you don't have that much product on your brush left, you can softly blend that into the surrounding skin. I like to do the same thing on the top as well, but only in this area here. I don't really need to carve out this area unless I see a mistake where I kind of went outside the lines. That I'll use this for. But otherwise, if I filled in my brows correctly, I'm only just going to do it for the definition, not for any correction. And to highlight that brow bone, I'm going to be using the color Blanc Type, which is an eyeshadow from MAC. All I'm going to do is I'm going to pack that onto the brow bone. And again, this is just to create more contrast between the skin and the brow to make the brows look even more, you know, intimidating and bitchy. And also, if you have a really smoky eye, what will happen sometimes is the eyeshadow smoke will go all up to the brow and it'll kind of make the brows appear like they're part of the eyeshadow and make them all droopy. And so highlighting the brows is a great way to prevent the brows from getting lost in all the smokiness. So that's pretty much my everyday natural eyebrow. As you can see, there's quite a difference between this brow and this brow. I don't really use any brow gels or brow mascaras. I've never really felt the need for them. Sometimes I will use some hairspray just to lay my brows down because I don't want people to be able to tell where I kind of exaggerated the length. When it comes to actual purchasing brow gels, I've never really felt the need for one. If you guys use a brow gel, let me know if you think it's worth it, but that's pretty much it for my natural brow. So now we're going to be moving on to this drag brow, which all I'm going to do is just wipe away some of that foundation. We'll be adding more foundation over top later. I'm just wiping it away because I don't want it to disturb the makeup and the glue. And the reason I glue down my brows like for drag or for creative makeup is just because, well, for men especially, our brows are very thick and coarse and down near our eyes, and by gluing it down I have total creative freedom and I can draw brows way up here, thereby giving me more eyeshadow space, and it really prevents you from being restricted to your natural features because you can create your own features, you know what I mean? So to glue down the brows you have a couple options. Some people use brow waxes, some people use glue sticks, some people use spirit gum, some people use Pomade. Personally, I go between glue sticks and spirit gum. For one thing, glue stick is a lot more easy to access and it's a lot better for beginners. However, one of the drawbacks about glue stick for me is that it's really thick and waxy and it can kind of build up, and the boundary around the brow kind of gets all crusty with glue stick, whereas spirit gum is just this clear adhesive liquid. You just put it on and once it dries it's basically invisible. However, spirit gum is a lot harder to take off, and because spirit gum is clear you can often still have the texture of the brow, whereas the wax of the glue stick will kind of cover up all the grooves in the texture of the brow. So like I said, they both have their own benefits and drawbacks. Today I'll kind of be using a mixture of both of them. So I'm going to start out with a layer of spirit gum, and I'm just going to brush that all on my brow. And after I've applied that, I'm just going to be flattening down my brows using that spoolie again to brush it down flat. And as you can see, well, I guess you can't see, but as I can see by feeling it, the brows are already a lot smoother. Whether you're using glue stick or spirit gum or Pomade or whatever you're using, you want to make sure that they're fully dry before putting anything else on top. If you put powder on top of like tacky spirit gum or like moist glue stick, it's just going to be a mess. It's going to look like gross, so definitely be sure to wait until it's fully dry. And once it is fully dry, you guys have seen me do this before, but basically what I will do is I'll take some loose powder and I'll put it in a little palette of mine. Basically we're just gonna take this on a sponge or a powder puff or whatever and go over that entire brow. And as you can see here, there's still quite a bit of texture on my brow, so if I try to cover it up with concealer, you could probably still see that texture, so I'm gonna go in with another layer. I'm gonna be using glue stick for the second layer just to show you guys how it works. One great thing about glue stick is that since it is so waxy, you can scrape some off. Like, these are the ends of my tweezers. You could use a knife or a spoon or anything you have. And I'm kind of scraping some of that off. And I'm just going to be putting that on top of the brow. And this is kind of going to act almost as a second layer of skin in itself and cover up the texture of the brow. You've seen in other videos what I will do with the glue stick is I kind of just run it over the brows like that, but I'm just showing you another way you can use glue stick to cover up the brows. One of the drawbacks to this is that it can get really thick really fast, so it's not really ideal for layering, otherwise you'd have like a huge Frankenstein brow. I'm taking a makeup wipe and I'm kind of just gonna smooth down those edges so it's not too lumpy. And once that's applied, you're gonna wait for it to dry. Like I said, definitely don't be putting powder and foundation over wet glue stick. It's not a good look, so definitely be patient and let it dry. Alright, so once that glue is finally dry, you're gonna go in with another layer of setting powder and just go over that once again. And once the brows are nice and flat and glued to the face, and once the glue is dry, then you can go in and cover the color of it. You're going to use a full coverage foundation or concealer. And then you're just going to blend it into the skin very lightly. If you blend too hard, the color will just wipe off and the brow will be exposed, kind of defeating the point of all that foundation. So I'm kind of just blending out the edges. So once that's nice and covered, your brows should look a little bit something like this, just looking like you have no brows at all. So drawing on a new brow on a completely blank canvas like this one can be a little bit intimidating. Filling in your natural eyebrows is a lot easier because you just work with what you already have. But since our skin is completely empty and blank here, it can kind of be a little bit confusing now since we have nothing to work with. What I like to do is I like to draw my brow highlight first and then draw the brow according to that. So taking this flat synthetic brush once again, I'm gonna go into the this is the NYX eyeshadow base in the color white. I'm just going to be starting around up here. And the great thing about doing the brow highlight first before the brows is that if you decide that it's a little bit too arched or too high, it's a lot easier to blend away the highlight and start over. Whereas if you started straight in using a brown or a black, it's going to be a lot harder to change once it's already on there without ruining all the brow cover that we did earlier. You're just going to blend this down and you have your brow highlight there. I'm going to take that white translucent setting powder that I was using and just set this highlight So now that we have that to work off of, it's going to be a lot easier to draw on our brows. I'm going to be using the exact same brush, the MAC 266, and I'm going to be starting off with the color Mocha, and I'm going to be starting off on that line where we drew that highlight. Again, I like to do another faded brow, so you can see I'm not starting too far in. The great thing about using eyeshadows is they're a lot easier to blend than like gels or pencils, which makes them ideal for doing that ombre faded brow. Okay, so since I'm mainly focusing my brush on this outer corner, once I get to the inner part, there's not as much product on my brush, meaning that this inner part is a lot more faded. If you wanted to go in with an extra color, you could go in with like a light brown and add that to the inner part just to fade it even some more. Just like before, you can totally go back in and clean up that brow if you have any mistakes, or just to add some more contrast. I'm gonna go in with some black eyeshadow, add that mainly to the outer parts. So that's pretty much it for the drag brow. As you can see, when I compare them side by side, I definitely have a lot more room for eyeshadow on this side, which is the main reason why I like to do it. So yeah, that's pretty much it for this tutorial. If you have any questions or comments or concerns, you can definitely let me know down in the comments. And let me know what other tutorials or videos you guys want to see from me in the future. But that's it for today. I'll see you guys all in my next video. Bye!